Welcome all. My name is Yolanda Ncokotwana, and I welcome you to the 16th edition of the European Film Festival taking place in South Africa. This year, we are showcasing 16 films from different parts of Europe, and one of the films that we are showing today, or that we've shown today, and that we'd like to speak about is Ncokotwana, which is The Immigrant by Erik. Hi, Erik. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Cool. I watched this film. I watched it twice. And I think what I really liked about it is how you thought about how you wanted to tell it. It felt like a love story, from a mother to everyone down the line. A love letter with elements of poetry from Christina, and it embarked so much. It had love. It encapsulated, I suppose, any message that I suppose one mother would want to carry on to their children. And I found it very interesting that she also kept to one story. I think the story of immigration and the settler stories can be very big, and you kept it very close, very intimate. And I just wanted to find out about your process. And I know that the story is based on a very famous literature in Sweden, and that there was another book, and there was another film, but I found your voice quite unique, and I just wanted us to speak about that process and how you managed to take such literature and own it and ensure that your voice is not lost in that.
Mm. Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for sharing our movie, which we, of course, are pretty proud of, but which has been quite a complicated project to put together because this story is inspired by four novels. It's a story about some people living in Sweden in the year 1849. It's not just one family; it's different families, and how this group are sort of been. They're living under hard. They are having hunger. They are having a religious suppression, and they really feel it's getting harder and harder to survive. And the hunger was so hard that their kids were dying, and then they sort of tried to put together what they had. They went to the coast. They saw the ocean, which they never had seen before because they were coming from the inside of the country. And then they were getting on board a ship. They didn't have much money, but they were crossing the North Atlantic, an ocean who took many people's lives, and to come over to this new sort of new country. It's like a territory they knew nothing about really, and they needed to find their way to be able to re-establish themselves with a home who represents a safe place, a place where they could survive, and most of all also a place for their children, a place where they could go for their dreams and their goals in life. So it's a beautiful piece of a story who's running through four novels, 2,400 pages. Now, to be able to put that into one movie is impossible. I mean, when I'm talking to my students, I say that if you believe that a novel can be a movie, forget about it. It's you have to take a small piece or find something else. But when I now actually were asked to look into these four novels and see if I could make something out of it, um, I said no, really. For the first reason is that Jan Troell, he made a masterpiece, a huge story to take 7 hours, about 50 years ago, but still it's so fresh as you see it today. And the film was even nominated for an Oscar. So why on earth should I believe that I was the one to do it all over again? But they said, well, but please at least just read the novels again. And I did. And as I was reading it, I realized that there is one story going through the all of the novels. It's a story about the couple of Karl Oskar and Christina and their small kids. And that story reminded me so much about the world today. The only difference is that this story took place at a time, at a place in the world, which today is people how they are rich, they are living well off, but at that time they had to escape, they had to flee, and I felt it was so important. I saw that I could tell this story, allow the audience to go with this couple for their dreams, for their struggle to save their kids' lives, go to this other continent, new continent. Um, and maybe by telling this story, remind the audience about the world today, who they are, who today are arriving in Europe, for instance, having many of them having the same reasons. And if it's not for pure hunger or something else, at least it is for the reason that they are using the right they have as a human being to dream for a better life, want to go for a better life. And as the political climate, the debate today in the Western world, both in the United States and absolutely in Europe, uh, are so have been so hard. I mean, it's to discuss migration is almost like you ask for trouble. And I wanted to take that balloon and see if I, with a needle or at least with a film, maybe could, you know, be able to raise people's awareness about who the people are today, who are escaping, who are using their, the human rights to go for their dreams. So that was the reason why I wanted to take this one single story and try to, strip it down to what it really is about, but follow it as the author William Moberg put it down, and tell it. Just take this one single story. So, well,
Yeah.
of course, this was my short answer on your long question, Yolanda. But anyway, maybe that gave you an answer. I don't know.
No, it did, and I think you've done that so successfully. I think the story of migration, when I watched it, it felt today. I knew it was happening more than 100 years ago, but I think the stories around migration and why people leave, their reasons, of course, reasons are different these days. It's war, it's other reasons, but still, the
Yeah,
idea of being able to be isolated from your community, from your home, from everything, and be stripped out of that, that I think stays with us all the time. And then you decided to have the story led by Christina. You decided to have it led by a woman and a mother, and who was also reluctant in the beginning. Do you want to just talk about, the
mm,
character, Christina's character?
of course. The what I found when I was looking into sort of the subject about refugees or people, who are breaking up from their home, their unsecure home, or in poverty, and the stories who have been told about them are very often about the husbands, the men, or sometimes about the children, about how they are sort of growing up, or in their new society, in their new country. There is one story which I really think is so essential, who I feel is so underrepresented in our stories told in literature and film today. It's a story about the women. It's a story about the mothers. Who are they? And I really feel curious about that subject, because when I sat down with some of my closest friends, which are refugees, or children of refugees coming here to Norway or to Sweden. Basically, I know their stories quite well since I know them for so many years. But I wanted just to get their ideas on about the dynamics in the families, the roles, who plays what. And what I've felt is that in so many of these families, the mother represents sort of, really the thing in the middle who keeps the family together. She also represents sort of maybe the one who have the biggest sacrifice in the story of having to break up, go to this other country. She longs to her country back home. She feels she's suffering from feeling that she's not standing up for the people back home. She's not helping them, her parents or uncles or sisters and brothers. She feels so bad for just going for her dream, if you see what I mean. And I feel that story is going through so many of these families I have met now lately. And I sat down and I met quite a number of other mothers and their grown-up children, and had more interviews with them just to really get a wider perspective on these families, who they are. And that just convinced me that to go on to tell Christina's story as it is, as it was that time, at that time, but still see that it's so similar to the world today, and about the mothers today. I felt that seems to be the right perspective to choose. And in our media today, making movies, there's a quite rough conditions out there. Me as a filmmaker who want to tell a story, the producers, the studios, they have numbers. Well, you need to put a man in the middle, you need to do such and so. That's what people want to see. So it was rough to convince them that this was the story, and that we had to remove so many of the other stories from the novels. But I had one really, really brave producer in the middle, Frederick, who really were supporting, and who really had the same idea. So so it made it possible to do that, and I feel that's probably what makes this story a bit more different, or at least maybe a bit more sort of exotic, because unfortunately I feel that these stories about these women are hardly able to see out there.
Yeah, I mean, you use the word exotic. Interestingly enough, I would have used the word, it's sort of like aids, women in emancipation, and just in terms of how women have always been, at the forefront. And in Christina's world, it's the guilt that you spoke about, but also having to, acknowledge what makes her happy versus what society requires of her. And I found that her relationship with the other lady that came from, who was regarded as the prostitute, who was with Erik, is that it was very, she had to come out of her shell to allow herself to, the friendship that her soul required and desired. And I just like that contrast of, the type of two women that they were. I don't know if it's something that, you were very intentional about.
Well, absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
working so much with the script, working so much with everything, we're down into details. Of course, we've been working a lot with every choice to be made in this story. But you know, it's in fact a situation where you are arriving in a new country. You are quite lost. You are you have been, they settle at a place where there are hardly people. And her husband, Karl Oskar, he just goes into the woods to try to get timber and build their house. And I mean, he loves the whole idea. And he can keep on for days. She's there with her small kids. There are hardly anyone around there, or if they are, she doesn't know the language. So finally, there's people showing up from Sweden, people who have her language, people who she could connect with, and for the first time, people she can feel being being a civilized human being. So this what we need is to be able to understand ourselves is in relationship to other people, and so she needs to be part of a society. And coming to a new country, when you don't know the language, then you seek for people from your country or your language. And that's very often also the reason why we get those what people call ghettos, when people from countries come together. And I understand, and I absolutely don't want to criticize that at all. And for sure not in this film, but we need to understand why. And of course, it's important to integrate in your new country, but there's also reason why people just, we all would do the same. We would at least need to feel that you are someone in relationship to other people who you at least can talk to. Your language is important, your culture is important. So that's an issue I wanted to put into the film. Now, it's what complicates it all is that these people, a lot of people were leaving Scandinavia, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, for religious reasons as well, because the church were coming so hard that if you believe something else within the Christianity, you were not allowed to do that. So there were so many people swimming over the ocean. And so the people who shows up, they are representing a small religious community, and that drags Christina into being a part of this community. And there is and those communities, whether they are religious or not, do represent a sort of a social community, which is maybe was the most important thing for Christina, and which I think is a really important issue for so many who joins the church or joins these communities. And then suddenly the day shows up where they believe so strongly in something which complicates your life and which makes it really hard for Christina. She almost have to choose between being part of this small community, but being a person, or withdraw from that and just going back into the wood almost with her husband. And I think this is an issue which also represents an issue for so many people. And this isn't my invention. It was made by Vilhelm Moberg when he wrote these novels in the 1920s. But he had done a really huge research on the communities in North America, the Scandinavian communities. And I found it so relevant. I found it so specific, so interesting to use in this story, because I really believe it's as much a story about the world today and about those societies and about the complex situations that so many of these people feel when they meet these dilemmas.
Yeah. No, I think so much is, thank you for that. So much is explored in your film. I think towards the end of it, I mean, I wish we had the whole day, but towards the end of it, when, Christina finally, finds out that she can't have any more children. And just in contrast, in terms of what's happening in America today, in that particular country, it, and obviously it's not my politics to talk about, but I thought it was very, very interesting, because it made it very now, very urgent. Like it almost feels like going back in time and then coming back again. But I think more than anything, you explored so many stuff in the film. I do want to find out, as sort of like my last question, what would you like the takeout for us to be? Because I found so many. I could relate to Christina. I felt like I know Christina, and I know many women who are Christina. But from your perspective, what do you want us to walk away from the film?
Well, I just, I wanted to remind us all about awareness about the fact that we are living in a world, and we will forever be living in a world where people need to move, where people, are need to look for other homes, other place to establish themselves. And instead of condemning it or sort of, believing it is wrong in any sort of sense, I just wanted to sort of remind us all about um, sort of or at least raising some sort of an awareness about who they are really, and for my from my point of view, when I do a movie, whether it's a sort of historical piece like this or it's a contemporary story, I I'm spending. It takes me 3.5 years to do a film, and I needed to feel as a relevant story. There are a lot of issues today, the environment, migration. There are so many huge, big, issues. The rise of the right wing. There's a lot of issues which really needs to be sort of put into focus. But I wanted to feel relevant, and I wanted to feel not like I'm concluding something, but that I can open up for at least a discussion or some thoughts for the audience. I don't know how much I can learn them about about the world today or about what took place 170 years ago, but still I feel that the film has a relevant sort of message, and that it might be creating some sort of discussions for some, and that's also what we recently have experienced as the film are now opening around in the world. I'm receiving questions. I'm receiving sort of people eager for my answers or thoughts on different topics in the film, and I love it. And I just I really I'm open for people to share them with me. Whether I can answer them all or not isn't always the fact, but at least I believe that to be a filmmaker today is to have a responsibility in the world where we just are, being entertained into death or into silence. I want to see if I, with a sort of quite huge commercial film, still can have a relevant issue or a message in the middle there. So, but what it is in detail for each of us. Is I'm much more open for, but the fact is that this is a story about migration in the world today as much as it took place 170 years ago. I think it's maybe that's what I'm most eager to lift.
Thank you so much to you, Eric, and your producer, Frederick, for the bravery of telling the story. And I think that is all we had time for. Do look out for the rest of the film on the ninth edition of the European Film Festival. And peace.
Peace to you all.